Hi, my name is Sangita Kumar, and I'm the CEO and founder of Be the Change Consulting. Join me in Liberated AF, the workplace revolution. This is a podcast where we get to explore what does it take to become the organization that we want to work for. So what is that? The organization I want to work for, it supports my humanity and makes me feel like I belong. It's a place that isn't racist, it isn't extractive. It works for the boomers and the Gen Alphas. There's space for everyone to bring their genius to work. Don't we want to become that? And don't we want to create that? So I have been studying organizational dynamics for over 20 years, and I love working with teams stuck in an entrenched challenge to bring clarity to diverse perspectives and look for ways that human-centered systems. We're going to tell stories, we're going to answer questions, we're going to offer strategies on this podcast. Together, we are going to become something new. Let's go.
Good morning, Sangita. How's it going?
Hey, Fong. Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I wanted to talk to you. I've been doing a lot of these project teams work, and folks are, asking for coaching and consulting around building their team's capacity around making decisions. Is that a topic that that's pretty active and pretty juicy in the field for you right now?
It's so live. Yes, that's a
Say
great.
more, say more.
Well, in when we look at characteristics of dominant culture, one of the top rated when we do our assessments, Be the Change over the past couple of years has been doing assessments with organizations to look at how dominant culture characteristics show up in their practices. And there's a lot of we've referenced these dominant culture characteristics before. There are things like sense of urgency and paternalism. And one of the things that comes up super high in most organizations is power hoarding,
Mm.
which, is like literally, I think we can all get a picture of what that looks like. Well, what's the picture that comes up for you in your head when you hear the word power hoarding?
I mean, okay, I'll speak from my role, the things that I have had to deconstruct and dismantle in my own body as a facilitator. Power hoarding, I race through the agendas, I set the agenda, or maybe as a supervisor, I make the decisions for my team without asking them, how it's going to impact them, or even check in to see how they're feeling. I mean, I think as a member of my household, being the matriarch, I think I do that a lot too, is I just make decisions because I'm like, this is the best for the family. And I found out later on that they didn't really care for it. But in that moment, I'm like, I'm doing the best for my family. And I'm quite absolute about my decision. Is that power hoarding? Or is that just being like, am I just being like nurturing and amazing? Is that power hoarding?
Yeah, it's like it's a double-edged. It can cut many directions. I love how, yeah, I literally, my first picture of power hoarding was like, much more like tyrannic, like somebody sitting in the office, like, get me my coffee,
Oh God.
get my dry cleaning. I don't know. Do people dry clean anything anymore? I've never been to a dry cleaner, but that like devil wears Prada kind of
That's
picture,
right.
terrible boss.
Hmm.
And then I think where you went was with much more nuance, right? Most of us, if you're listening to the podcast, I imagine we're not the Meryl Streep Devil Wears Prada boss. We're probably more in the place, where you're talking, where we're trying to make the best decisions on behalf of people, maybe sometimes out of a sense of care, maybe sometimes out of a sense of like, I've been doing this, for a long time, I know best, and I want what's best for you, which might land on people as I want to do what's most comfortable for me, and I bring what's the best for you, right? So that friction between what the one that you said, the last one, the example of as a mom or as a matriarch, isn't I want to control you, right? That's not the feeling that you're moving from. I want what's best for the family. But this idea that one person can decide what's best on behalf of a bunch of other people is it's an idea from democracy, right? That's like how our government works, that we have we elect a representative who then should be acting on behalf of all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And that sometimes in the family role or sometimes in a organizational like team, that role of decision maker, we're not elected into it necessarily, but we kind of get boxed in to that place, and it can be tricky.
You mentioned, we're pulling a little bit of politics in here too, as our own democracy. And I feel like we live in a false democracy, right? Where we talk about one voice, one vote, and the people have the power, and we are really working to get that power. When you hear the term false democracy in leadership spaces, the folks, and for you as a leader, what does that mean?
Well, yeah, like just like it means this like at a different scale, right? What's happening in the United States, at least, it feels like our democracy is slipping every day. It
Mhm.
is not representative of the people. And I think something similar in many organizations, it can feel like that. That there's a idea that a leader is supposed to represent us, and maybe they are, and maybe they're not. But I also see people moving towards like as especially the organizations we work with, as we talk about dominant culture characteristics, and we describe power hoarding, and
Mhm.
then you ask staff, like, what are some places where you would like to have more decision making, more influence over the way things go? I see a lot of leaders like getting curious about what it would look like to do that, to try it on. I think a lot of leaders feel a lot of pressure to make the right decision and worry a lot about the backlash or the critique that they will get for not making the most popular decision. And a great way to combat that really is to get more input from folks so that you're
Mhm.
whether the decision is made by somebody else, right? Whether you invite your all your staff to vote on days off in a calendar year, or um, how to celebrate staff holidays or staff outings, staff celebrations. Like whether the decision is being held by somebody outside of you or you're just getting more input so that you're making a more representative decision. I see people trying to do it or being curious in how to do it. And in that place, okay, so in that place where people are leaning in and they're attempting to create a table that has more perspectives around it, I think a false democracy can occur if we're not careful about who actually is going to make the decision and what
Mhm.
information or perspectives do people need to have in order to make a good decision.
We can define what good decision, and I want to ask you, making decisions is hard,
Mm.
right? So I want, I hear the move is that in order to dismantle your own power hoarding, you should slow down. I heard that, and ask their staff for more influence, right, to get their input. And then you said, get clear on who's going to make the final decision, right? So in that space, it's like, let's hear from the staff, and then the leaders are going to be more informed in the decision. So they're not going to center just themselves, but the group. So that makes sense. But my thing is like, what happens when you want the team or the staff to make decisions? And like I said, making decisions are hard. And I've experienced there are teams who say they want that. And when it's time to, it's really hard for them to make the decision for various reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've experienced that too. I have one project right now where I'm facilitating a racial equity committee in a
Mm,
in a very big organization, and they're all kind of middle managers. I think we have one person who's on the executive team who is our liaison to the executive team, but everybody else is
mm.
kind of below executive. Some directors, some managers, some line staff. It is so slow. Like
Yeah.
10 of
I think
them
that's-
coming together for 90 minutes on Zoom. Like, what you and I can do in 90 minutes, this group would need like 8 hours because they're
Mhm.
being careful with each other. They're listening, they're taking time to figure out what do I want, what's allowed, um what are the criteria that we should use to make this decision? Do I get to just say what I think, or should I be understanding how a different department would perceive, this decision? Like they're slow, I think, one, because they're not practiced, right? Like you said, it's hard. There's actually like a muscle that gets built. The more decisions you make, the easier it gets and the faster you're able to go. But when you're outside of the seat of power, right? Traditional leadership kind of has access to more information because they're sitting at a higher perspective. And so it's like, what can an eagle see versus what the mole on the ground sees? The eagle can just see more, and it misses a lot of the detail. Well, that's
Right.
the eagle, eagle eyes, they can okay, but whatever. When you're super high up, you might not see all of the detail that somebody super down closer to the ground might see, but you have a better sense of the lay of the land. And I think that also gets them stuck. And so it can be a false democracy for many reasons. It could be because you're expecting a decision to happen in a certain amount of time. And if you bring
That's
more
right.
people into it, more levels and more roles, it needs like, I don't know what the formula is, but I try to think like what I think I could do alone. With 2 people, it probably doubles the time. With 3 people, it probably triples the time. So we kind of have diminishing returns if you're just looking at how efficient. If efficiency is about the time spent, the more people you invite in, the longer the process requires and the higher quality facilitation it needs. And so if getting to a great decision, right, is like it's about if I don't say this decision, it's worth it to put more time, more resources, and more thoughtfulness into it, it becomes a false democracy because it won't be set up for success. If I bring 10 people together to make a decision that I'm typically used to making by myself, and then suddenly I'm like, well, that was 3 weeks ago. Where's the decision? Um, they're going to feel like discouraged.
Right, and that's where the honesty comes in, right? So you're saying if you're running a false democracy and how you can be honest as you dismantle power hoarding is that one is that this requires resources and time, right? So as a leader, if I don't even say that of the get is that you're not being honest, right? And I wrote down these 3 S's because you said, what feels slow or is slow is because folks are not practiced. And that's a skill, right? With anything, when you haven't been given time to build a muscle, your skill is still, you're still building that muscle. And then also, when you talked earlier around making decisions, it's also scary. There's a level of safety that is needed too. So I feel like those are the things that you have to be honest about is that it's going to take time. You have to create spaces so people can practice and build their skills. And then you also, I mean, the biggest thing is like you have to build that culture of safety for people to, make decisions and get it wrong and then try it again and get feedback.
Yeah. Ooh, right. Okay. So what were your 3 S's? Speed,
That's what
skill, and scary, slow.
So I said, yeah, I said, I well hooked off of, it's slow. People, if what feels slow, right, it's because people are not practiced. And the reason why they're not practiced is because they don't quite have the skill yet,
Okay.
right? And then it's also needing the level of safety too. Can you think of I think about the thing that we've done internally in our organization is like one is like, getting honest that it takes time. We've also set times, right? During this project meeting, we're not going to have the space to flex the skill, but we're going to start off the week with a team meeting where we're going to practice on listening and making small decisions, so then people can be practiced into other spaces. What are some other ways?
Yeah.
Um, Leaders can lean into dismantling power hoarding, because the word in of itself is scary. Nobody wants to be a power hoarder, but connected back to the story that I was saying, even though I jokingly said it, I was all like, wait a minute, am I a power hoarder? Like I'm making a best decision for my family and being a nurture, you know, I'm, I feel like I know best because then they don't have to think about it. Right. So I think that there's this level of, there will be probably be a level of defensiveness too. Uh, that a leader would have to
Oh,
be able to
yeah.
face.
I think there's like a tenderness, right? So that like
Yeah.
when you say that, like, yeah, to think that this effort and this labor that I'm doing on behalf of someone else is seen as um as a power hoarder, like you're calling me a power hoarder, like that is not going to hit me right. So sure, that defensiveness, we can sort of think about what would it take for us, right, to prepare ourselves to let go of, or to create some space in that story to say it's not that maybe my effort, it's not that necessarily that my effort is not being appreciated. Like I might have to do some reframe for myself, to say I don't think it's that my effort is not appreciated. I think it's that the not owning a decision to be told you have to do something and this is what I've decided is the best thing for you. It does ring of paternalism. What I see happen is it actually makes it harder for the person that you're asking to implement that decision. It it takes longer for them to get on board because they're having a feeling of like, why didn't you ask? And what I have, so one thing I've learned is just to start with like, here's my best thinking. This is a proposal. What do you all think and what might I be missing? So to start with like I can practice is in to still hold that I made the decision and that I did the best thinking that I could with the information that I had, and to share with the group, this is a proposal, it's a starting place. Let's take a few minutes to see if we want to add anything or like reactions. And if I big reactions right away, I probably missed something that was really important to someone. And so then we can go from there, right? It doesn't have to be that everything is co-designed. That I know that like most of us, we even as a small organization, we don't have the time to do a whole ton of co-design. And I think bigger organizations really don't have time. So it's I think it's fine to have one person is going to own the decision or is going to come with the first proposal and the rest of us will react to it. And then even in that first phase of we're all going to react to it, those 3 S's that you said, it's going to come like the reaction won't be fast because, someone's going to be thinking, well, what do I feel about this? I've never been asked what I think before.
Right.
So am I actually supposed to say what I really think? What's the language that I use to share my feedback? So maybe I don't even know what I think. If I do know what I think, I don't know how to describe what I think. If I know how to describe what I think, I'm worried about how it will land for my peers. They might be worried about like, so what is scary there? Could be I don't want to say something that my peers might not agree with because I see my peers are my cohort. That's where I get my solidarity, right? Add another S. I don't want to turn my peers off of me. I also don't want to turn my boss off of me. And so like maybe I'm between a rock and a hard place. And so all that, it's like all this negotiation that happens internally, I just see it like just bogging people down and it gets pretty slow. So I do think step 1 can be asking for, offering a proposal, but then be aware that all those S's are at play even in that stage.
I thank you for that. It's not even a pivot. It's I think because you mentioned paternalism, I was saying that I was thinking to myself it's like paternalism was also modeled for us in so many spaces, right? Like when you went to Meryl Streep and you were talking about that manager that was power hoarding, it's like that's what we see, that's what we're socialized to see. So I think that paternalism goes hand in hand with this power hoarding. So that was beautiful. And the more that you go slow and ask that question, you also create a level of safety, not just for your staff, but you as the leader, because it's so scary. Like this is my proposal. Let me hear what I've missed. So I love it. It's like it takes a little bit of time. It gives staff time to practice and it gives us time to practice because I imagine then we open up a little bit more. And I imagine as we ask those questions in those spaces, we start hearing some themes, right? We start hearing like, oh, okay, like that's an area that I didn't see. So I like that a lot. Okay, so one other question before we start closing out this session is that how do you name that false democracy? Like, have you had any experience where you're in our organization and other places that you're like, do you drop that F word? you know?
Yeah, I think I've been tracking it a lot the past couple of months because I'm watching clients. I'm facilitating clients in this conversation, both the leadership team and the kind of the people like this racial equity committee or like subcommittees, working groups that are not the tradition. They don't have the positional power, but they might have the identity-based perspective, of there's like lived experience versus the positional experience. Um, and then I'm seeing it in our own team. And one thing that I have realized in myself is I think I can get scared to like I can allow a false democracy because I get scared to name any of those S's, especially the one
Mm.
around skill set. Like that feels
Mm.
like it's saying a rude thing to say, "Oh, you haven't been practicing this muscle every day." And so yeah, to get to like truly get a seat at this table, if you really want to make a decision, you get to work towards it. And the fact that you haven't had a seat so far, and the fact that we want you to have a seat, doesn't mean that you are that the seat itself isn't everything that you need to be successful. It's also the
That's right.
practice, and it's also the like internal confidence, and it's also kind of being exposed to how like what are the parameters that we need to keep in mind when making this decision? How does the budget affect it, or where's the political will, or if I make this decision, what other parts of the organization will be impacted, or who are the other stakeholders who we need to keep in mind as we're making this decision? So
Mm-hmm.
I get scared sometimes. So just to pierce it and to be able to name for our team, and we tried it in our last staff retreat, and I don't know how you felt, but I felt like it was so relaxing because for the first time in many years, I felt like I could actually have a real conversation with the team about things that were about how we set our strategy. Um, so what happened there was, we asked all of our team members to come up with potential goals for the year, and you and I both kind of saw the goals, and I was like, "Oh, these goals they're all over the place, and they're fine. They're all good goals." But I could see by looking at the goals that some of them were totally based in individual staffs, like what they want for themselves and for their role, because they're seeing only this much of the organization. They are in that position of uh, like if you think about animals in a forest, and like you've got fish and you've got monkeys and you've got whatever parrots, they're living in different parts of the ecosystem. And so they're saying the things that they want or the things that they think are needed based on where they're sitting. And as I looked at them, I was like, this is interesting, right? So if it was like that old story of like we want to be efficient and we want to work together to like land on three goals, like bringing more people in, I get to shift that story of like we want to get it done in 3 minutes or 15 minutes or an hour or 5 hours, and instead we get to say, well, let's talk about what we're seeing here. So we can move it to a meta level, and we can ask ourselves like, what are the perspectives that these goals represent? What are some of the which of these goals are really about an individual perspective and which are about collective? Who would this benefit and who would it impact? Like those are good, I think, scaffolding questions to help bring our team into a strategic conversation, not about what goal to choose, but even about how goals were proposed. And it takes us back to that proposal place where we're building the capacity to make a proposal. And why would that not need capacity building? Why would that would be silly to think we don't need to practice at that level. So practicing responding to a proposal, practicing making a proposal, practicing deciding, giving input on or voting on a proposal, practicing living with a decision that gets made that might not have been the one that you want. All of those steps, I think, require piercing that false democracy and being able to talk about it. And, I wanted to do this podcast because I thought these were so confusing for me to figure out how to name. And we've tried it, and I think we've done it poorly, and I've done it poorly, and I've done it better. And but I think these are like, I don't know, they feel kind of invisible dynamics. When you care about your team, you care about dismantling power hoarding, and it doesn't just happen overnight.
Um, I found the move that you did felt super honest. And I want to say that I felt like there was so many times in which you've used that one question, that practice of like, this is my first proposal. I want to hear what you all think. You've done that so many times. So it's been slow, paceful, methodical to build the safety. So I think what we got from that session through all those questions to support the capacity building, which we've sprinkled through all the times we've been with different iterations of our team, started building the skill. But I think when the safety is not there and the pace is not right, the skill doesn't stick. So I think what felt different was the time, like you said, being honest about the resources and time. So there was momentum in this, and it did not feel like a false democracy this time. I think that we walked out of this particular sessions with goals that you and I were like, oh, wow, this is one that we didn't think of, but this is very aligned to where we need to go strategically. And I think there were the goals that you and I were hoping that would surface that our team was like, strategically, this is where we should go. So yeah, so those three S's, you know, as we continue to hold this conversation and create the space, we would love to hear how this content and how these moves stick for you all. Until next time.
We hope this conversation provided helpful insight and inspired you to create a more inclusive and liberated workplace. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please subscribe, leave a review, and share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. Your support makes a huge difference in helping us reach more listeners like you. We love to hear your thoughts on today's topic. Connect with us on social media and drop a comment. You can find all the links in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.